Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, in a major escalation, President Trump says the U.S. has seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela.
No, it was seized for a very good reason.
Heavily armed forces rappelling from helicopters hitting the deck with guns drawn, marking the first time the U.S. has overtly interfered with oil exports, Venezuela's main source of revenue. The news follows nearly 24 strikes on alleged drug boats, including that controversial second strike that killed 2 survivors. Martha Raddatz reports. Extreme weather wreaks havoc from coast to coast. Water rescues from major flooding in the west, with evacuations underway in Washington state. And a new Arctic blast moves in from the Midwest to the East Coast tomorrow. Minneapolis declaring a snow emergency.
I'm Stephanie Ramos here in Buffalo with a look at the below-zero temperatures and life-threatening wind chills on the way.
Tension on the tarmac, a car speeding past taxiing planes on an active runway. Pilots sounding the alarm as the vehicle flew past them Monday afternoon.
With 1057 hold position, there's a high-speed chase on the taxiway.
Millions of foreign tourists may soon have to hand over a lot more than their passport in order to vacation here. A White House proposal would require visitors from 42 countries that travel to the U.S. visa-free to submit 5 years of their social media history, as well as personal information about themselves and their relatives. Could this become a reality, and what would it mean for tourism? Universities across the country are grappling with the impact of the Trump administration's DEI policies and, in many cases, the loss of funding for their programs. In tonight's Prime Focus, we talked to 4 university presidents about the future of higher education, how their campuses have reacted to the changes, and whether or not college is truly affordable for the masses. And Kate Winslet, here tonight to talk about her directorial debut, working with her son and reuniting with James Cameron.
It's just a remarkable experience. I felt so uplifted by it every day, and I kind of never wanted it to end. It was just magical.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin with a major escalation in the U.S.'s showdown with Venezuela. The U.S. military seizing an oil tanker just off the Venezuelan coast. Late today, the Trump administration released these dramatic images showing Navy choppers swooping in and heavily armed Coast Guard forces rappelling onto the tanker's deck, guns drawn as they swarm the ship. We'll tell you what we're learning about where the tanker was heading and what President Trump said he'll do with the oil. The president said the ship was seized for a, quote, very good reason, then warned the leader of a different South American country that he could be next. A short time ago, Venezuela responded in a statement calling the tanker's seizure a blatant theft and an act of international piracy. This all comes amid the U.S. operation targeting alleged drug boats. There have now been nearly 24 strikes, including that controversial second strike killing 2 survivors off Venezuela. We have House Armed Services Committee member Representative Chrissy Houlihan standing by. But first, our Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Raddatz leads us off.
Tonight, the dramatic escalation. The U.S. seizing an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Navy helicopters swooping in, swarming the ship. U.S. Coast Guard forces rappelling down onto the deck, armed with long guns, meticulously searching the ship. Late today, President Trump before the cameras.
We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening.
Attorney General Pam Bondi tonight says the tanker was used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran and is part of an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organizations. Sources telling ABC News it was headed for Cuba, capable of carrying up to 2 million barrels of oil.
It was seized for a very good reason.
Today's seizure marking the first time the U.S. has overtly interfered with oil exports, Venezuela's main source of revenue.
Well, what happens to the oil on this ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Until now, the U.S. has been targeting boats they say are carrying drugs, striking at least 22 boats and killing nearly 90 people, including 2 survivors at the heart of the latest controversy. A growing number of Republicans now demanding the video of that second strike on survivors be released, but so far, the administration hasn't budged. Tonight's seizure of that oil tanker marks a new chapter in the pressure campaign on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro.
So how far would you go to take Maduro out of office?
I don't want to say that,
But you want to see him out?
his days are numbered.
Can you rule out an American ground invasion?
I don't want to rule in or out. I don't talk about it.
Late today, Venezuela calling the seizure of the tanker a blatant robbery.
So that's a wait and see. Martha Raddatz joins us now. Martha, the U.S. now has thousands of service members in the region, and today the president threatened the leader of a different South American country. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Lindsay, make no mistake, the U.S. seizure of that oil tanker off Venezuela is a significant escalation. You saw those images of the U.S. Navy helicopter storming that tanker. The U.S. actually now has 15,000 U.S. forces in the region, and it's not just Venezuela. Late today, President Trump warning Colombia's president that he better wise up or he'll be next. Lindsay?
Martha, thank you. Joining us now to discuss the tanker seizure further is Democratic Representative from Pennsylvania, Chrissy Houlihan. Representative Houlihan is also a former officer in the U.S. Air Force and currently serves on the House Armed Services Committee. Representative, thank you so much for your time. There are many details about the seizure that we still don't know. Of course, you just heard Martha Raddatz reporting there, but can you tell us anything more about what happened?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. And actually, I think that's part of the problem is I'm sitting here in my office in Washington, D.C. As you mentioned, I'm a member of the Armed Services Committee and also a member of the Intelligence Committee. And I can't tell you much more than you just have presented to the American public about what happened and why it happened. And that's not okay. Just today, we voted on an annual piece of legislation called the NDAA, the Defense Authorization Act. And just today, we voted to stop the use of authorized military force that was passed in 2001. So Congress is supposed to have a say in when we use military force. And this Congress has not had any say in when we're using military force, and it hasn't had any briefings on why we are using military force. And that is really, really problematic and should be troubling to all Americans.
So do you have any recourse?
So certainly, the recourse is the Constitution. Article 1 says the Congress has the power of the purse, of course, and so has the ability to fund these kinds of things. And unfortunately, this Congress hasn't been willing to use that power. It also has the power of oversight. And again, this Congress, run by a Republican Speaker, Mike Johnson, is also apparently unwilling to demand this kind of oversight that we should be requiring, that all citizens should be requiring. And so the good news is that in the last couple of weeks, as you just reported, I have been seeing some Republicans who are willing to come out and say publicly that this isn't okay and that they want to see briefings about the strikes that you talked about previously. And of course, this one, which is fairly incomprehensible when you think about it. An oil tanker in the middle of the international waters being attacked by the United States military is not something that you hear about every decade. And that's something that we should all want to get to the bottom of and understand the answers. In some ways, I'm actually interested in trying to be willing to understand the rationale here, but there has been no rationale given, and there has been no involvement of the Congress, equal branch of government, the Congress.
The Coast Guard tells ABC News the oil was en route to Cuba. Politico reports that from there the oil was to be sold to Asian energy brokers. Is this how Venezuela regularly evades U.S. trade sanctions against the sale of their oil?
I would not comment on that until I have better information. I would not be surprised if there weren't sanctions that were violated. That is, in fact, why we have sanctions. But I think that that's not necessarily the way that we should respond to sanctions violations without, again, involving the Congress and the American people by proxy, the Congress by proxy for the American people.
You were one of 6 members of Congress who put out a video advising members of the armed services to not follow illegal orders. You were ostensibly referring to U.S. strikes against boats allegedly carrying narcotics. Is there anything illegal about the U.S. seizing an oil tanker in order to enforce sanctions?
Well, so importantly, this video was made not about the Venezuelan attacks or about what's going on domestically, but rather about a culminating accumulation of those kinds of things that worry people like me who have service backgrounds, that people should make sure that if you are in the military, that you understand that you are obligated not to follow illegal orders. But what I will say is that it sort of made our point when just a few days later, this concern about whether or not the strike on the boat, the double tap, so to speak, was a legal act. If you assume that the war is legal and that the president's rationalization, his lawyer's rationalization for this is legal, then something like the double tap on the boat still may be a war crime, which is why we're still asking for the full tapes and the full audios. If you don't assume that it's legal, and that is up for the lawyers to decide, then it is actually a murder to do those kinds of things on the open seas. And so this is why many of us in that group of 6 wanted to make sure that we reminded people in uniform of their constitutional and oath-bound obligations.
Yesterday, we heard President Trump say that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's days are numbered. Trump also would not rule out an invasion of the country. Do you believe a ground invasion of Venezuela is in America's interest?
He'd have to do some explaining in that. I can't even imagine that the American people have any appetite for yet another forever war. In fact, one of the reasons why President Trump was elected was he was espousing that he also was against any further incursions from the American people into other people's countries. And so this seems to be counter to everything that he ran on. And I can tell you that he hasn't done anything to explain to the American people why this is so important. I can only imagine it's oil. I can only imagine it's money. But that's about as far as I can get.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan, we thank you so much for your time and insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it, too.
And we're also following some extreme weather from coast to coast. A dangerous, fast-moving storm is pushing into the Northeast. Winter weather alerts are in effect from Michigan to New York and up to Maine. Heavy snow and near whiteout conditions are expected in some areas. Minneapolis declared a snow emergency after a storm left dangerous driving conditions on highways around the Twin Cities. It's not just snow and frigid cold out west. A flood emergency is unfolding in Washington state. Danny Beckstrom from WABC is standing by with the forecast. ABC's Stephanie Ramos reports first from Buffalo.
Tonight, extreme weather coast to coast wreaking havoc. Water rescues from major flooding in the west and an Arctic air-fueled snowstorm from the Midwest all the way east. Up to 8 inches of snow slamming parts of Minnesota. Drivers stranded all over the Twin Cities overnight. Minneapolis declaring a snow emergency. Authorities say a 47-year-old man was hit and killed by a snowplow in a parking lot at a Minneapolis-St. Paul airport facility. In Wisconsin, an army of plows trying to keep up with the snow all over Green Bay. This jackknifed tractor trailer spotted on northbound Interstate 81 south of Syracuse, New York. You can see the massive traffic backup it created. In the Pacific Northwest, flooding intensifying from multiple rounds of record-breaking rain. This gas station underwater.
You can see the RVs that are underwater behind me.
First responders using boats to bring multiple people to dry land south of Seattle and Ording. Authorities warning up to 75,000 people to be ready to evacuate low-lying areas.
Important for people to heed that warning. Stephanie Ramos joins us now. Stephanie, how are people there preparing for the snow?
Well, a lot of folks are going to be staying indoors. A lot of folks that we've spoken to say they're just going to bundle up if they're heading out, because here in Buffalo, temperatures are set to plummet tonight with wind chills in the single digits. So the big concern is black ice, and that Arctic air will fuel more lake effect snow through tomorrow night. Lindsay.
All right, Stephanie Ramos in Buffalo for us tonight. Thanks so much. And let's get right to meteorologist Danny Beckstrom from WABC. Hi, Danny.
Hey, Lindsay. This system, a quick hitter, but it does pack a punch. We're looking at snow for much of the upper Midwest into parts of northern New England, rain for the I-95 corridor. This making for a very slick evening commute, right? We could see up to about 6 inches of snow stack up for part of the interior Northeast. We have another system moving in as we head into tomorrow, this bringing another round of snow to portions of the upper Midwest. We're looking from Des Moines over through about Springfield, a slick Thursday evening commute. So that's 2 in a row. Behind this, it kind of opens the door for another blast of Arctic air. Dangerous wind chills as we head toward the weekend. I mean, check out Minneapolis working through the weekend. Sub-zero, yes, but we're talking feeling 20 below zero. That is significant and can be dangerous. As Chicago sub-zero wind chills, we're looking at Louisville seeing sub-zero wind chills as we move towards Sunday. Here in New York City, feeling like the teens as we wake up to start Friday morning in New York. So it gets a whole lot colder as this next blast of winter air arrives. Now in the Pacific Northwest, flooding has been the main event. We're going to see an additional 2 to 4 inches for a lot of western Washington, and some of the higher elevations could see 4 to 6. This is really going to exacerbate the flooding that has been ongoing all week long, especially for the higher elevations. And then the mountain peaks picking up a little snow on top of that. Rivers are already starting to rise. This is something that we're watching really closely, Lindsay, even as we head into today, tomorrow, and into Friday as well because of the flood risk. Lindsay?
And you know it's brutal when we're looking forward to getting out of the single digits.
Yes.
Danny,
Yeah.
our thanks to you. Today, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates by 1/4 percentage point, marking its third rate cut this year, with inflation still high and the job market cooling. The decision follows weeks of disagreement among top officials about the Fed about another rate cut, with 3 out of 12 members of the Fed's Federal Open Market Committee dissenting from the cut, the highest number of dissenters since 2019. Elizabeth Schulze joins us now with more on this decision. So just to start out, can you break down for us what impact this rate cut could have on our finances?
Yeah, Lindsay, we always watch these interest rate decisions closely because if you're borrowing money, so carrying a balance on your credit card, trying to get a new car loan, taking out a mortgage, that is affected by these Federal Reserve decisions. So this is the third interest rate cut of this year. The Fed's rate is now at the lowest level in 3 years, so those lower borrowing costs should make it at least a little bit cheaper to borrow money. This is a big deal right now, especially for consumers and businesses. What the Fed is really trying to do, Lindsay, is encourage borrowing and spending in the economy to promote hiring. We've seen a slowdown in the jobs market, and the Fed hopes that this series of rate cuts, including this one today, will help kind of stimulate the economy when it comes to hiring and overall job growth.
As we mentioned, this rate cut decision was particularly divisive. What were some of the main sticking points?
It was. It's unusual to go into a Fed meeting with this much kind of open disagreement about the path forward, and that really speaks to this moment we're in right now in the economy. You have the jobs market that's been weakening. We've seen the bigger number of job losses, some pretty high-profile companies announcing job cuts. At the same time, Lindsay, you still have inflation above where the Fed wants it to be. Prices are high. It's something we talk about all the time, especially for those day-to-day goods. So the Fed is trying to balance this reality that it would normally cut rates to boost the jobs market, but if inflation's too high, it would normally raise rates. So it's kind of stuck on what to do here. What the Fed said today is basically now it's on hold. It's going to see how the data comes in. It's not pre-committing to any other decisions. It expects maybe one more rate cut next year, but really now the message from the Fed is very much wait and see mode to see what happens with the economy. It hopes that its policy right now keeps the economy in an okay place. Lindsay.
Is it likely that this divisiveness, the Fed that we're seeing now, is something that could happen more for future rate decisions?
Well, it's impossible to ignore the kind of politics at play here, because what Fed Chair Jerome Powell has really tried to do during his time at the Fed is unify people there to come to agreement on these decisions. Though he said today, any sort of debate is always healthy. But we also know that President Trump has been very vocal that he disagrees with the Fed. He wants lower rates. Today, Fed Chair Powell says not so fast, but Powell's term is up next year. President Trump is interviewing candidates to replace him this week. We will very much see a different makeup at the Fed depending on who the president chooses, and that could mean that there is likely even more division potentially next year in the months to come.
All right, Elizabeth Schulze, our thanks to you. We're seeing dramatic new video of a car racing down a busy airport taxiway, speeding past passenger jets in California, pilots sounding the alarm to air traffic control, and we're learning new details about that incredible crash landing of a plane hitting a car on a major highway in Florida. Here's ABC's Gio Benitez.
Tonight, tense moments on the tarmac. A car seen speeding past taxiing planes at Orange County's John Wayne Airport south of L.A. Pilots sounding the alarm as the vehicle flew past them Monday afternoon.
You guys see that white Camry?
Air traffic control warning all pilots to stay in place.
Southwest 1057, hold position. There's a high-speed chase on the taxiway.
Sheriff's deputies chasing down the vehicle and detaining the driver, a security guard. The airport telling ABC News the individual was evaluated on scene and determined to be experiencing a possible medical emergency. And in Florida, after that remarkable crash landing on I-95 east of Orlando, a small plane striking a car, authorities now releasing 911 calls.
A plane hit a car as it landed on I-95. I'm calling 911.
Panicked drivers alerting dispatchers.
I saw him coming down, and I hit the brake. He came right beside me and hit the small white car.
The driver of the vehicle was taken to the hospital with minor injuries. Incredibly, both people on board the plane were not injured. And Lindsay, back to that speeding vehicle on the tarmac. The security guard was taken to a local hospital for further evaluation. The airport says that operations were not impacted, but of course, a very concerning incident, Lindsay.
Very concerning indeed, Gio. Thank you. New details tonight about the deadly shooting at Kentucky State University. One student was shot and killed, another student critically wounded. Authorities say the suspect is the father of a student who may have been attacked on campus. Our Matt Rivers has the latest.
Tonight, 48-year-old Jacob Lee Bard is charged with murder after allegedly opening fire on two students outside a dorm on Kentucky State University's campus. Police say Bard, who is a parent of a student at that university, was the, quote, active aggressor in a physical altercation with the two men and shot them during the dispute.
They got an active shooter. I think they've got him detained.
19-year-old DeJohn Darrell Fox Jr. died from his injuries. The other student in critical but stable condition.
Within minutes, by 3:14 p.m., Frankfort police officers arrived on scene.
Fox's family speaking to our affiliate WRTV.
It's not fair. It's not fair to take my brother's baby.
Officials now poring over security cameras on campus, as well as video circulating online that appears to show a student being attacked. Investigators working to determine if the incident possibly played into a motive for the shooting.
We have collected that video and have that. We were able to get video from campus, has a lot of good security cameras. We were able to gather that.
Students and faculty shaken just days before winter break.
Why was this even able to happen? Why was this even something that could have happened?
And Lindsay, classes do remain canceled at the university for the remainder of the week as authorities try and figure out why the parent of a student at that same school would allegedly open fire. Lindsay?
Matt, thank you. Today, a key witness took the stand at the trial of Brian Walsh, the husband accused of killing his wife outside of Boston. Her former boss testified about the last night he saw her alive. Here's ABC's Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, prosecutors resting their murder case against Brian Walsh after showing the jury this video they say shows him buying a hacksaw, hatchet, buckets, and other supplies he allegedly used to kill and dismember his wife, Anna, a mother of three. Today, one of the last people to see Anna Walsh alive, her friend and former boss, fought back tears as he recalled spending New Year's Eve with the couple at their home south of Boston.
Anna came running out of the house to greet me.
The friend testified it was a festive evening with the couple, but 4 days later, Brian Walsh called to say Anna had gone missing after she left for a work emergency before dawn on New Year's morning.
I was incredulous. I said, what work emergency could there have been on New Year's Eve?
The final witness, Anna Walsh's close friend.
Do you recognize that picture?
Yes.
Breaking down on the witness stand as she testified the Walsh's marriage was falling apart.
She told me how upset she was and how frustrating that was and how she was really at a breaking point.
Anna Walsh's body has never been found, Lindsay. Brian Walsh admitted that he moved it in an irrational panic, but insisted he did not kill her. The defense case starts tomorrow. Lindsay?
Our thanks to Aaron Katursky. The University of Michigan has fired the head coach of its football team, Sharon Moore, and Moore has now been detained by police. A school investigation found evidence he had an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. Michigan's athletic director said in a statement the conduct constitutes a clear violation of university policy, and UM maintains zero tolerance for such behavior. Moore was head coach for 2 seasons and led them this year to a 9-3 record, with the team ranked 18th in the country. Biff Poggi will be the interim coach for Michigan's bowl game on December 31st. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has directed diplomats to stop using the Calibri font on State Department correspondence and return back to using Times New Roman, specifically size 14. Rubio's predecessor, Antony Blinken, switched to Calibri 2 years ago to ostensibly help those with disabilities such as low vision and dyslexia. In a memo, Rubio called the move another wasteful DEIA program and that he switched back to Times New Roman to, quote, restore decorum and professionalism to the department's written work work products. Sophie Kinsella, best-selling author known for her Shopaholic book series, has died. Kinsella revealed last year that she'd been diagnosed with glioblastoma, a form of brain cancer. Her family announced the news of her death today in an Instagram post saying she died peacefully with her final days filled with her true loves, family and music and warmth and Christmas and joy. The first two of Kinsella's 9 Shopaholic novels were adapted into the 2009 film Confessions of a Shopaholic. She was 55 years old. Congressional leaders gathered at the Capitol today for the annual menorah lighting to celebrate the beginning of Hanukkah. Rabbi Levi Shemtov lit the menorah with Speaker Mike Johnson and Democratic Minority Leaders Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries joining the festivities. Each highlighted that anti-Semitism still runs rampant today and cannot be ignored. The Jewish holiday begins Sunday evening. Coming up, foreign travelers could soon be required to reveal years of their social media history to enter the U.S. We have the details of the new proposal from Customs and Border Protection and higher education in the age of Trump. We talked to 4 university presidents about how they're navigating the political landscape and what, if anything, can be done to control the spiraling costs of college. Millions of foreign tourists are going to have to hand over a lot more than their passport if a new customs and border plan becomes reality. We're taking a look inside the proposal by the numbers. The new rules would require tourists to provide 5 years of their social media history before entering the U.S. It's not clear if the proposed rule includes only public social media posts or if it includes private messages as well. This would apply to the 42 countries whose nationals are currently permitted to enter the U.S. without a visa. That includes longtime U.S. allies like Britain, France, Germany, and Japan. Customs already claims the authority to search the devices of anyone trying to enter. Last year, agents searched about 47,000 devices from people at the border. You can refuse to have your device searched, but then you may be denied entry. In addition to social media history, CBP plans to ask travelers for email addresses that they've used for the past 10 years and the personal information of immediate family members, including names, phone numbers, addresses, and birthdays. The new rules aren't formal yet. The public still has 60 days to comment. The plan is an escalation of measures President Trump has implemented in recent weeks to restrict the movement of foreign travelers after a man from Afghanistan was accused of shooting 2 National Guard members near the White House. The president said at the time that he would tighten immigration rules, including permanently pausing all migration from third world countries. Christian Cordero joins us now from Washington. The obvious logistical question is, how will social media history actually be screened? Seems like this kind of scale would require AI or a digital algorithm. What kind of concerns is that sparking?
Privacy ones first and foremost, Lindsay, and then, as you mentioned, practical ones, legal ones, and ethical ones as well. Look, government data shows there are somewhere between 11 and 13 million tourists that come to the U.S. every year from Western Europe alone. So the idea that the government will comb through 5 years of social media history from each person is a little far-fetched, raising concerns that you mentioned that the job could be outsourced to things like AI. And these are the 42 countries that fall under this visa waiver program that now would be subject, if this rule in fact does pass, to a little bit more scrutiny, particularly when it comes to the social media of it all. But right now, the proposed rule change is just that, and so there are a few details on how this exactly would play out, Lindsay.
Any response just yet from the tech or social platform companies?
So, yeah, not publicly, but they are among the rest of us who have an opportunity to chime in over the next 60 days, and it will be really interesting to see where they land with all of this, because we know that the major tech CEOs have cozied up to, if not partnered with, the Trump administration during this second term. And so depending on what kind of tech we're talking about, they could, some of them, even have something to gain here when we talk about AI, right? But they could just as easily face pushback from any of their millions of users who trust them with sensitive information, and then the ripple effect of having to share information from your family members and things of that nature.
Tourism to the U.S. has already dropped during President Trump's second term. What kind of impact could these proposed rules have?
This compounds the Trump administration's message that There are stricter rules, I should say, to get into the U.S., whether you are trying to come here as an immigrant, as a student, or as a tourist, as this proposed rule would apply to. And so it comes at a crucial time because the U.S. is set to host at least 2 major global events during this administration. That's the World Cup next year and then the Olympics in 2028. Several of the countries impacted by today's news have already qualified for next year's World Cup, Lindsay, as have 2 countries the president has banned travel from. So there are many questions going to next year's events.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating to see how that plays out. Christian Cordero, our thanks to you. Coming up, from heads of state to tech innovators to cultural power players, Forbes is out with its 100 most powerful women in the world. We'll tell you who made the list. Plus, a state trooper in Missouri jumps into action when a car goes flying down the highway, headed for disaster. Welcome back to Prime. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. The U.S. has seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela amid high tensions between the 2 countries. President Trump said the tanker was taken for a, quote, very good reason. Attorney General Pam Bondi posted video of the seizure on social media, saying the tanker was transporting sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran, and the operation involved the FBI, Homeland Security investigations, and the Coast Guard. New details were released about yesterday's shooting of 2 students at Kentucky State University. One of those students has died. Police identified the suspect as Jacob Bard, a parent of a student at the school. He's now been charged with murder. Officials say they're investigating a video appearing to show a student being jumped, but that it's too early to label it as the cause of the incident. Much of the country is battling extreme weather. A quick-moving storm is bringing rain and snow into the Northeast, with Arctic chills expected in the coming days from the Midwest to the Northeast. Out west, record-breaking rain has caused flooding in the Pacific Northwest, with water rescues and evacuations in Washington state. Forbes released its annual list of the world's 100 most powerful women. Taylor Swift, Kim Kardashian, Melinda French Gates, and Oprah Winfrey were among 13 billionaires on the list. Also notable was the 100th entry, the women of K-pop demon hunters, and the first European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. We'll have more on the list in tonight's rundown. Coming up, my in-depth conversation with 4 college presidents about the future of higher education in America. And we'll tell you what caused an ancient lake to reemerge at Death Valley National Park. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Tonight, we want to take a look at the future of higher education with the perspective of 4 college presidents. Today, we brought the presidents of Cornell, Penn State, Clark Atlanta, and University of Arizona together for an in-depth conversation. Here's a sneak peek of tonight's All Access, which was a wide-ranging conversation from is college affordable to how each school is impacted by the Trump administration. President Kotlikov, I want to bring you back in. Cornell obviously settled with the Trump administration in November for $60 million, $30 million fined, $30 million to support U.S. agriculture. In that settlement, there was no agreement of wrongdoing. But at the same time, there are questions as to why then you agreed to pay a fine.
Yeah, we had a number of Office of Civil Rights complaints lodged against Cornell, and we were in the position of going through those and fighting those in court. And when we started out this discussion with the federal government, we had 2 goals. One was to restore our relationship with the federal government and restore our funding. And the second was to do it in a way in which we did not compromise our principles. We did not have the government dictate our policies or our procedures. And I think we achieved both of those goals. But as part of that, we did agree to for the government to end these suits at Cornell, which would have cost us in excess of $30 million to fight, and was costing many careers while our grants were suspended. And then $30 million we invested in ourselves, really, in agriculture, in an area in which we can provide technology to America's farmers and do good for the country, an area where Cornell has excelled in the past.
President Garamella, the Trump administration sent letters to 9 universities, what they described as a compact with higher education for excellence. Your college was one of 7 who rejected that compact. Give us, in essence, what the compact was requesting and why you decided to reject it.
Yeah, Lindsay, the University of Arizona, I believe, demonstrated a serious and a transparent and a constructive approach, I think, to this national policy discussion. So our response, as you probably know, was among the most comprehensive in the country. And it reflected our commitment to academic excellence, to accountability, to meaningful engagement. And so, you know, the response we submitted speaks for itself.
Let me ask by show of hands, if you think that there would ever be a case where it's appropriate for the federal government to intervene in what's taught actually in the classroom.
Lindsay, if I may, one way that the federal government influences us all is in setting priorities, and every administration has done that. What are the critical priorities for science and technology? What are the critical areas for the United States to be competitive? So I guess in that way, when they say here are 8 areas for research funding, that does impact what we all do. But directly in the classroom, I would agree that that's less of a federal intervention and more of setting priorities for research.
President French, there was a Rutgers University professor recently who said that she believes the Trump administration's support for HBCUs while rejecting DEI sends a message that the president, quote, doesn't have an issue with black people in black spaces. I think where he gets uncomfortable is black people being in spaces that he thinks belong to white people, end quote. Do you think that that is a contradiction to support HBCUs and at the same time reject DEI?
Well, it's very clear the administration, and you're intimately correct, the administration has determined that HBCUs are not DEI. As a matter of fact, DEI would be a concept that came into play in the late 60s, early 1970s, about 100 years after HBCUs were in existence. So HBCUs were not a solution developed and created by the federal government, but we are a part of the United States workforce. We've come to depend on these graduates who disproportionately graduate from HBCUs with small percentages of HBCU populations, like 4%. We create 50% of black judges and 40% of engineers and doctors. So it's really not about a moral imperative when we speak about HBCUs. This is about an economic imperative for the bottom line of our nation. So since SCOTUS, since that decision, of course, our impact, as we've seen an explosive enrollment growth. We had over 50,000 applications last year with students with average GPAs of 3.71 at Clark Atlanta University. So some of our best and brightest students, they're coming home to HBCUs.
You can watch the in-depth conversation in tonight's All Access, The Future of Higher Education, streaming on Hulu. Coming up, is your addiction to Oreos so great that you'd be willing to try sugar-free Oreos? We'll find out as a new product is about to hit store shelves. And we sit down with Academy Award winner Kate Winslet to talk about her directorial debut with the new film Goodbye June. That's up next. Forbes spotlights the world's most powerful women, dramatic dashcam video of a hero in action, and America's favorite cookie gets a makeover. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. An ancient lake that once existed at Death Valley National Park has reemerged after record rainfall in the region. Several inches of water have formed in Badwater Basin, which lies at 282 feet below sea level and is the lowest point in North America. During the Ice Ages, the basin known as Lake Manly was once a lake with depths of up to 700 feet. The water creates a stunning reflection of the surrounding mountain peaks as it evaporates over the coming months. A state trooper in Missouri noticed a driver on the wrong side of the highway and quickly changed course to intercept the car. Video released by the Missouri State Highway Patrol shows the trooper making a rapid U-turn after noticing the vehicle driving the wrong way. The trooper flashes the car multiple times with a spotlight before crashing into the vehicle to get it to stop. Officials say the wrong way driver was impaired. A guilty pleasure will soon feel a little less guilty. The parent company of Oreo cookies announced that they are rolling out zero sugar Oreo cookies in the United States. The company sells zero sugar Oreos in Europe and China, but this is the first time they will be offered in the United States. Zero sugar Oreos and double stuff of zero sugar Oreos will be available at retailers nationwide starting next month. A wild scene in Missouri as a truck carrying cattle crashes on the interstate. Missouri State Highway Patrol officials say that 2 semi-trucks were involved in the crash, one being a tractor-trailer hauling cattle. No one was injured, and at least 1 cow was roped and wrangled after taking a break on the median. Officials now say that 13 cows are still on the loose and are warning local residents not to approach the animals. One self-driving taxi in San Francisco served as the de facto delivery room for a mother in labor. Waymo said that a passenger was on their way to the nearby hospital to give birth, but ended up going into labor in the back seat of one of their taxis. According to the company, this isn't the first baby born in a Waymo. At least 1 other baby was born during a ride in Phoenix. The company said the vehicle was, quote, immediately removed from service for cleaning. Forbes magazine released its 22nd annual list of the world's 100 most powerful women. 13 billionaires appear on the list, including Taylor Swift, Kim Kardashian, and Lauren Powell Jobs, who was the widow of Apple founder Steve Jobs. The top 5 most powerful women are all politicians or government officials, including Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and the #1 most powerful woman in the world, according to Forbes, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Centered around the sudden turn of health of their family matriarch, Goodbye June follows 4 adult siblings who reunite and navigate the possible loss of their mother, June. At the middle of all this is Julia, played by Kate Winslet, who also directed the film. Juggling children, aging parents, and a demanding career, we watch Julia try to hold everyone and everything together. Let's take a look.
I've had so many responsibilities. I have to pay for our life. Mum and Dad's mortgage, and then your mortgage when you can't, which I know we're not supposed to talk about. Helen's therapy. Connor's next crisis. I do it all.
Joining us now is Academy Award winner Kate Winslet. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
I think everybody can relate with your character. Let's back up and talk about your son, Joe, who's 21 years old. He writes a script based on his own experience with losing his grandmother when he was 13. Give us a sense of your initial reaction when you read it.
So my son had gotten a place in screenwriting school at the National Film and Television School in the UK, and he was really nervous about this new challenge because he just didn't know if he was going to be able to do it or not. And he wrote this script, and I read it, and immediately it was clear to me that it was not only it was a film, but that he could definitely write. And I said to him, okay, well, we're gonna do this, and I'll produce it, and I'll play the sister Julia. And about sort of 8 to 10 months later, when he'd really done a lot more work on it, it was so strong and so good, and I felt so close to it at that point that I said to him, we can't give it away. I would like to direct this. Each character was so brilliantly drawn in the sense that they each go on their own emotional journey alongside each other as this messy, complicated family who are processing something so challenging, having not really spent much time together for a long time. My character Julia and the sibling Molly, played by Andrea Riseborough, they haven't spoken in years, to the extent that their children, their 5-year-old smallest children, are only meeting for the first time in this hospital waiting room. So lots and lots of complexity.
Obviously, people know you for your acting prowess. You've been producing for several years at this point. What was it like having your directorial debut?
I mean, I can't talk about how much I loved it enough. I loved it so much. And I think it was a combination of incredible actors, a story that I believed in wholeheartedly. You know, we only had 35 days to shoot this film. And Helen Mirren in the title role of June, I only had her for 16 days. And so I had to be really on my A game, really prepared, lots of multitasking, as you would imagine, a lot of forward thinking. But it was just a remarkable experience. I felt so uplifted by it every day, and I kind of never wanted it to end. It was just magical.
Switching gears now, I was able to just get back from Paris after seeing the Avatar debut there and premiere and interviewing the cast and James Cameron as well. It would be remiss if we didn't bring that up. What was it like? You and James Cameron go back a long way.
Yes, we do.
What's it like reuniting with him for the latest installment of Avatar: Fire and Ash?
Just wonderful, honestly. I mean, he's such an extraordinary man. He's a kind of an out of this world director. His ability to imagine a universe like that one, like Pandora, it took my breath away when I saw the first movie. And to see how much that has evolved, frankly, as technology has almost caught up with his brilliant mind, it's incredibly exciting, and he sees potential in everyone.
And just lastly, what is it like when you return to your role as Renal? I would have to imagine that it's different acting for Avatar than it is in any other performance.
It's a completely different experience because performance capture, which is how you would describe that particular technique, it's almost like theatre in many ways, because you can be seen from almost every angle. There are cameras rigged absolutely everywhere in that studio space. And a lot of it you are also imagining, which is very similar to theatre. I've only done one play in my life, believe it or not, when I was 19 years old. But you do have to imagine so much of a set that simply isn't there. I feel so honoured that I got to play that wonderful role again. It was just extraordinary.
Kate, thank you so much for the time and
Thank
the conversation.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
Goodbye June is in select theaters beginning December 12th and streams on Netflix starting on December 24th. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.